Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Exploring Sacred. This is your host, Denise King Francisco. And to those of you who are listening of the military persuasion, those that are actively serving, and those who have served, happy Veterans Day from me, a dyed in the wool Army brat. That's me, even after all of these years. So I want to say happy Veterans Day to those who have served and those who are serving. I think that every day of our lives can qualify as making us a veteran, and particularly for those who continue to serve in the armed forces, wherever you happen to be. I know that some of you tune in, and just know that there's lots of love coming from here, home sweet home, in the United States, to all of you wherever you happen to be, whether you're here on the mainland, as they say, or in a far-flung place. We love you, and we pray for your safety and for both you and your family each and every day, I think is what I wanted to say. Good morning, Holly. Good morning, Tara. It's great to have you in the chat room. The chat room is open. And you are more than welcome to join me and everybody else in the chat room. Today we're talking about finding your unique path and practice. Boy, and for some people, that can be something that happens throughout life. You know, sometimes we tweak it. It becomes something different. Sometimes we awaken to it later in life. There are so many ways that we find ourselves on our path and in our practice, whatever that happens to be. And maybe it's because of my military upbringing that for me, practice is pretty easy. You know, it's something that you do every day, because in the military, there are things that you do every day. I was sharing this morning on Facebook. I woke up with some memories rolling through my mind early this morning. Some of my favorite memories of living on military bases, good morning, Lady Hawk, was the sound of revelry in the morning. You know, it would play over the base sound system wherever we happened to be. So at dawn, revelry would play, and we didn't need an alarm clock because at that point we were all awake. And in the evening, taps would play. And those are the sounds that I grew up with. It was the practice of the military and the military base community, that those things would happen every day. And from the moment revelry began and ended, and in between that and taps playing at night, we would find ourselves, of course, going to school or playing in the summer. But one thing that remained constant was the sound in the morning of the soldiers coming into muster. And after they would muster, they would begin jogging in unison in a certain path or two. And as they jogged, they sang. And it sounded like a chant. And on top of all of those boots hitting the pavement in perfect rhythm, and those voices singing, chanting. Sometimes they weren't even words, they were sounds, but they were in unison. And it was a daily practice of revelry, of muster, of chant, of jogging, the sound of the boots, school, evening chores, and taps. And that was a community practice, and we all became part of that practice because we all lived on the military bases with one another. So for me, having practice or being diligent about something is pretty easy because it's part of the practice that I've always known. For others, having a practice, identifying that practice, and the practice that leads us on a path. For me, growing up in a military family with that daily practice all around me, I was ensconced in it. at one point directed my path to applying to the United States Air Force Academy, where I was accepted, and being very excited about becoming a cadet at the Air Force Academy out there in Colorado Springs. And of course, only then to find out that I wasn't tall enough to fly airplanes. Well, flying airplanes was the purpose for me applying. And so I knew that my path was taking me elsewhere. It was taking me somewhere else. And it wasn't going to be defined very quickly. One of the things about finding our path and our practice is that sometimes it actually begins with a practice. And the practice opens a way for a path. A daily practice, maybe a weekly practice. What is your daily practice? Do you have something of a schedule that happens when you get out of bed in the morning? Your feet hit the floor, and is there a practice that takes place from there? What is your daily practice? Do you get up? Do you pour yourself some coffee? Brush your teeth, all of those good kind of things. Is that your practice? And what about finding in your regular routine practice, as you muster in the morning, time to have a practice for your soul? A place where you and your soul reacquaint with one another each and every day. How does that happen? Does it happen? How do we make that happen? Quiet time in the morning when we get up. Maybe it happens while you're having your first cup of coffee or tea or a glass of orange juice in the morning. I love my Java. It's a good batch this morning too. Making time for more than just brushing the teeth, brushing your hair, shaving your head, as Todd does every day almost. Making time for something beyond that. Maybe it's a practice of gratitude while you're having your cup of joe, eating your Wheaties in the morning or your oatmeal. A practice of gratitude. That's one of the best practices that we can all have. No matter what our other practices can be, having a practice of gratitude really opens the gateways, the windows to paths that we might never have otherwise dreamed of. I've got some of my favorite people in the chat room this morning, and so ladies, if you care to share your practice and maybe how it influenced your path, that would be outstanding. If you would care to share that, that would be terrific. The practice of gratitude for me is something that I do every single day. Every single day. Pardon me. Without fail. Even in those days and in those times when, seemingly there's not a whole lot to be grateful for, being able to mine something, to be grateful for, to give thanks for. If we look hard enough, we dig deep enough, we can find something. And if we point that out, if we say it right out loud, or if we say it within our heart and within our mind, it's amazing how that practice of gratitude expands our life, expands more to be grateful for, and it expands our ability to be able to find things to be grateful for. Just chatting here in the chat room. There we go. Small practice can lead to really cool pathways. And it doesn't have to be so much as, what do I want to say, as diligent as having a morning exercise routine or any of that. Nothing, it doesn't have to be militaristic, if you will. Mine just happened to be. It can be something very subtle. It can be something very graceful. For me, the attitude of gratitude, or the practice of gratitude, being thankful for people, places, things, and experiences, has always opened up gateways. Always. As a kid growing up, I was, always astonished and amazed by what I would learn. And luckily, I had a father who taught me, go out there and learn. If you don't understand something, ask a question. Well, I have a very inquiring mind. Anybody who knows me knows that. I'm very inquisitive. I want to know stuff. And so if one of my neighbors who happened to be from another customer culture other than mine, were living near me on the military base, I would ask questions nicely, with respect. I would ask questions. And I would learn, and I would be so happy to learn. And so happy to understand that if I asked the question appropriately, respectfully, as the Sarge used to say, I would get to learn more. And in being grateful for learning new things and having new information coming to me, and being grateful for that, even as a kid, the path opened to learn more, to explore more, to become a world citizen, to become a universal citizen, not just a citizen of my own four walls or my own clan, if you will, but a citizen of the world. And I do believe that that really is what has driven me my entire life, is my inquisitiveness, my quest to understand more of the world around me, within me, seen and unseen. And it's brought me to many paths that I can choose or not choose to take, many experiences, some that are, a little lackluster, and others that are indescribable. Tara is saying, just sitting with a cup of coffee and a purring cat snuggling next to me is a peaceful way to start the day. That is a great way to start the day, Tara. Yeah, that's a great practice. And in that practice, the path for the rest of the day means that your day began peacefully. It began peacefully. We can have a daily path. We can have a yearly path. We can have a decades-long path. We can have a soul's avocation path. How does it begin? Hey, Mary Ann. Holly is saying, I visit with nature every morning to see who is out and about and thank the divine for the beauty I see. That is a great practice. That's a great practice. Thanks for sharing that, Holly. Mary Ann, how do you start your day? What about you, Lady Hawk? What's your daily practice in the morning? How do you begin the pathway of your day? When we begin really small, I think it becomes easier to find ourselves in a practice and upon our own unique path because we're not overwhelming ourselves. Boy, here's an overwhelm. Going to yoga for the very first time. And I really wanted to integrate yoga. And I'd seen all these amazing poses and things on Instagram and what have you. And I thought, well, boy, I'd like to learn how to do that. It didn't take me long to figure out that the practice of yoga is like the practice of life. It needs to come incrementally. And we need to kind of sort of stretch our muscles and our bodies to be able to accommodate the path that's unfolding. I don't know that I'll ever be able to do much more than a downward dog or, some of those kind of things. And I love doing yoga. But what I did learn is that when they talk about the practice of yoga, it really is something that unfolds. The path unfolds on the mat, right? You are the yogi on your mat. And I kind of take that into my life, that whole idea that I'm the yogi of my life. And my practice, right here, where I am right now, in the now, on the yoga mat of life, what I do, particularly with my morning practice, will set the path for the rest of my day. And during the course of that day, I'm given opportunities along the path of my day. And it builds, it becomes, and we can add on to that practice from our yoga mat of life. And some days it's really good just to be able to do a downward dog and hold that position. And other days, maybe we think we're ready for a headstand. Every day is unique in our path and our practice. And they don't all look alike, even within a certain practice. Even within a certain practice. Hey, Sonia. Catherine Lady Hawk is saying, yoga has been on my mind for about a week. Must be time to look into it. She also goes outside. Yeah, what is the practice? What is the routine? How do we get into that? And it builds. Sometimes, I have been accused in my Scorpio-ness, my dear friend Darlene, who is a Taurus. And Taurus is very methodical. And I'm married to a Taurus. Taurus is very methodical, which is wonderful, especially when we're looking for partnership with friends, etc. Because as Darlene has often said to me, I wish I could be like you, man. Sometimes you just dive right in. There's no fear, no holds barred for you. You just go for it. Well, there's beauty in that, but there's more beauty in the middle way. I said, yeah, and Darlene, you've seen me kind of crash and burn a couple of times. From diving, headlong right in. She goes, well, I guess you're right about that. It's all about balance. The balance of Taurus and Scorpio is beautiful. Balancing water and earth, right? Earth and sky. All about balance. So the reason I bring that up is sometimes we say to ourselves, I'm going to go do yoga, and I am going to be able to bend like a pretzel. I know it within a month. Well, you might be bending like a pretzel, but it might not be the pretzel that you had in the mind's eye of glamorous yoga poses, right? It could be looking like just a pretzel stick because you're just sore from what you tried to do too soon. Allowing the practice to unfold in increments and in steps is a beautiful way to go. Because the other part of that is when we have a practice, and as it unfolds, when we take it slow, we get to take a look around at the landscape of our practice. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What am I observing? What is it about my daily practice that nourishes me? Spending a moment with that thought. Why do I spend time with gratitude every morning? What does that give me? What does that feel like? Spending time there, no different than Catherine and Holly saying they go outdoors. I go outdoors every day. It's part of my practice to be outdoors every day. And I'm not doing anything. I'm being in it. I may be walking around the enchanted forest, but I'm being in it. I'm allowing it to inform me and me to inform it. Just in being. It's in those quiet times, whether it's like Tara with her little fur baby in the morning with her cup of coffee. It's in the moments of making the practice a practice, of being present in that moment. The practice of being fully present. to the smells, to the sounds, to the feelings, to the memories, to the cadence. Being fully present in that daily practice. Being awake and aware. And what we become awake and aware to in our daily practice is unique, and it becomes part of our unique path. I once asked the question many, many years ago of one of my mentors at the time, Wakian Snamani. I asked him, I said, what is the Lakota way? And he looked at me and he started laughing. And he said, oh, you need to get out of your Wasichu mind, your white mind, and get into your native mind. There is no Lakota way. The only way is the way between you and Creator. That's the way. There is no one way. Everybody has their own way. And isn't it astonishing how hard sometimes we try to fit into one way? And we give up because we don't fit into that one way. You ever done that? You try to be the perfect Reiki practitioner. You try to be the perfect whatever practitioner. You try to be the whatever, trying to fit into one way. And you don't fit in. So you say, to heck with it. The baby's going out with the bathwater. Not doing it. I can't do it like that. Well, of course you can't do it like that. You weren't meant to do it like that. We're all meant to do it uniquely and differently. And not everybody honors the unique. Let's just be honest. Some people feel that you have to do it just one way. And if you don't do it just that one way, well, then you're not really doing it. I always take a look at that. Are you really doing it or not? I look at the results. There are a lot of people who say they can do a lot of stuff. And they're really loud about it. But I look at the results. Because I also see really quiet people just going about their own unique path and practice. And I see results. I see results in them. I see results in what they're doing, what they're creating. And it's not based on one certain pattern. And I'm not talking like the practice of piano or that kind of thing. You kind of sort of need to know some things when you're playing, the practice of piano. If you want to play Chopin, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about spiritual practice, healing practice. It's unique. It's wonderfully unique, or it should be. All right, here I'm not paying attention here. Good morning, Lily. My little sister Lily is in the house. Hey, Lily. So finding our unique path, here's the prescription. Just be you. Be mindfully, consciously aware of you and your relationship with spirit, to your surroundings with nature, to your soul. It's those connections that help you find your practice and path. I'm just assisting Gabriel here for half a second, so excuse me, everybody. My Gabriel just turned 15, and he's getting kind of old, and, so he has little accidents and things, and sometimes he requires a little more. And so that's part of my practice every day, is to take care of the critters in the forest. Todd and I, here in the Enchanted Forest, part of our practice, our unique practice, it's like, I just want to say, with regard to having a unique practice, there are many ways to connect to soul and many ways to connect to spirit, to connect to creator. It's all in where we find it, right? What nourishes our soul. For example, so the other day, for me, part of my practice is that I take care of Dominic and Gabriel and, of course, Heaven and Tussie and the four-leggeds at the stables and here in the house. But what about all of the critters in the enchanted forest? Part of having a practice and the path unfolding out of the practice is to be mindfully awake and aware. And it always reminds me of what Mother Teresa used to say: do things with love, and that becomes your practice. And Mother Teresa used to talk about washing the dishes, mopping the floor, caring for, people who were in need in Calcutta, in the streets of Calcutta. She didn't just do something, she did it mindfully, and mindfully with love. Even the most mundane tasks, which takes me to the other day. It was beautiful weather here in West Michigan. 70s, sunny, gorgeous, wonderful. And so, of course, the little squirrels and things coming out to really collect a whole lot of acorns and whatever it is they collect to get ready for the winter. And I decided to cut up some apples for them. I was going to see the horses, and I thought, I'm going to cut up some apples for the critters. So whether I'm cutting up the apples for the horses to take, for treats, or if I'm cutting up apples for the groundhogs and the chipmunks, and we have turkeys and all of those kind of things, squirrels, deer, foxes, we kind of have it all here. When I do cut up the apples, or if I have leftover celery, and I'm cutting it up, I don't just go through the motions of. As I'm cutting up the apple, I'm very mindful of being in a loving state. I'm very mindful of being in a loving state, and that has become my practice, to remind myself that when I'm feeding the boys or the girls, when I'm getting their food ready, I do it with love. Same holds true when I'm feeding apples to the critters on the edge of the enchanted forest, when I'm refilling their water container. I'm very mindful of being in a state of love. Why? Because that state of being influences the food. The food. I've been taught for many, 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 many years now that we never create ceremonial food for ceremonies if we are crabby, if we're angry, if we have an upset. Don't participate in creating the food, creating prayer ties, ghost ties. If you can't be in a good frame of mind, then you need to back away from that until you're balanced and you can create those foods and those ceremonial things in a good way. It becomes a practice then. The more we do it, it becomes a practice that whether I'm getting apples ready for the critters or if I'm preparing a meal for myself or my family, I don't just prepare the meal. And what makes it all that more special is the fact that I'm being mindful of being in a state of love for the people that I'm getting ready to serve, the animals that are going to eat what I'm creating, etc. And sometimes I am crabby, quite honestly, because we all get crabby. I am a Scorpio after all, so sometimes I can get really crabby. And then snap, because of my practice, just like a rubber band, I will remember. Put your crabby pants away, right? And breathe in the state of love. You want to serve up crabbiness or you want to serve up love to who it is you're getting ready to serve? It's become a practice. And it just began with me reading about what Mother Teresa taught. And it began to build until it's part of who I am and what I do. It began small. And I don't berate myself when I start out crabby. Maybe something happened. I don't say, oh, you got to give up this practice. You forgot. You're crabby. What happened to you? No. I remind myself, oh, that's right, I'm human. So sometimes I'm crabby. But I can reroute that. Ever have that happen? Holly is saying, your soups are magical and they beg me to eat them. Thank you for that, Holly. Yeah, when I'm making food for others, I literally envision the frequency of love going into the food. And that just sounds so romanticized. It's not, well, it could be if you're not doing it, but it becomes a practice. It's what you do. It's what you do. What are you feeding? Everything's energetic in the universe. What are you feeding others, right? Catherine is saying, I've really enjoyed discovering all the new critters here at work, too. Yeah. Holly's saying, I talk to the birds when I feed them as well. Wonderful. Isn't that wonderful? Feeding the bird feeders. Like Todd, when he does all that kind of a thing, he sings. He'll sing songs while he's filling the bird feeders. He'll sing, NAP songs or something. It becomes a practice. So the practice doesn't have to make us all of a sudden become the new Sadhguru or Baba Ram Das or Hamid Bey. It just means that we're having a practice and we're becoming the master of our own path. We're all here for self-mastery, not to master other people or tell them how to master their own selves. It's about self-mastery. And everybody's path to mastery, the balancing of body, mind, spirit, emotions, and mind, or physicality, you know what I'm saying, all four sides of the pyramid, body, spirit, emotions, mind. Everyone has a unique way of doing that, and it begins with a simple practice, which can become several practices. And it could be something, maybe you don't do it in the morning, maybe you do it at noontime. Maybe you do it morning, noon, and night. Maybe you only do it at night. Maybe you do it when you remember to do it. Maybe you do it when you're feeding the birds. But what I'm saying is whatever it is, don't make it so that it has to be militaristic. It's a practice when you are doing a certain thing, perhaps. Like Kimberly Wink. I love Kim Wink. She taught me a great practice. I tend to get really tight low back muscles from, what I do in the course of my day. And she taught me a great practice that while I'm brushing my teeth, she taught me a really great stretch to do while my electric toothbrush is running. I do it. It's made a difference in my life. My back is much more, it's not as tight, it's not as painful, my low back anymore, because of this simple practice that she taught me. Isn't that wonderful? Practices don't always have to be sitting in the corner of your meditation room chanting Om Shanti Om or Om Mani Padme Om. It doesn't have to be that. Practice of gratitude, the practice of taking care of our body, the practice of expressing love for those that we're cooking for or getting ready to present to, whatever. Small practices. And they add up to pathways opening. They add up to pathways of meeting other people who may have a similar practice or maybe a practice that you could add to your own. It's all unique. Remember, there is no one Lakota way. The way is between us, our soul creator, which I think is like all one thing for myself. That's just me. It's unique. Celebrate your uniqueness. It doesn't have to be grandiose. You don't have to be Joyce Myers on her show or, her show on TV or YouTube. No, it's about, and if you are, that's fantastic. No, practice and the path is about your own self mastery, your own equilibrium. And what happens when we find our equilibrium? Our gifts and our talents come right up to the surface. How do you find your passion in life? It begins with a practice. I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know what I want to do. Begin a daily practice. A daily practice? What do you mean? Let's begin with the daily practice of gratitude, what you're thankful for. Thank you for the abundance in my life and for the abundance that continually flows into my life. I'm grateful for blah, 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 blah. Magic happens. All of a sudden, that becomes a practice. And what we're grateful for becomes more abundant in our lives. And our passion for that which becomes more abundant, if you're giving gratitude for it, chances are you're passionate about it or you like it. And as you give gratitude toward it and you get more of it to be grateful for, we see a pattern unfold. We see a path that unfolds. A path that involves what we are grateful for and passionate about. And pretty soon we find a path, or a path finds us. Very rarely do we find the path, unless you've got one of those, bushwhacker machines that you could use in your spirituality. See what I'm saying? To clear a path. No, the path reveals itself. The path reveals itself. And sometimes we can be a little hesitant or reticent to hop on that path that's revealed itself. Oh, I've been there. Have you ever been there? Reveals itself and you think, oh no, this is not what I imagined. Not what I thought would be. Well, maybe what you imagined or you were thinking about wasn't actually the voice of your soul that was having you think about it or imagine it. Maybe it was the imaginings of your parents, of your colleagues. Maybe that's who was informing what you were imagining or hoping or thinking. What was your soul hoping or thinking or imagining? Sometimes we have to think about that when we're thinking about practice and path. Who is it that's trying to inform me of what my practice and path should be? Who is that really? Is it your childhood religion? Is it the neighbor? Is it who lives with you in the cul-de-sac? Keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak? Or are you allowing your soul to have a practice? When the soul has a practice, no matter how subtle it is, the path reveals itself and it is brought to you, courtesy of your soul's connection to the universal laws and the universal love, the application of your soul. You see what I'm saying? Finding your unique path begins with a daily practice. And at first, maybe it's the weekly practice. As I was thinking this morning, waking up and thinking about growing up on the military bases, thinking about how beautifully all of those sounds came together every morning, from the bugle to the chanting and the singing to the boots hitting the pavement, listening to those soldiers sing. And thinking about this podcast this morning, I was thinking about, I'm pretty sure that when those soldiers began boot camp, probably some of them maybe thought they were never going to get past boot camp. Maybe some of them barely got past boot camp. Maybe some of them thought, oh my God, what did I just do? My dad was a drill sergeant. The Sarge was a drill sergeant for many years. So I know what it's like to grow up with that kind of practice. Discipline is what he called it, discipline. But then eventually, day after day in boot camp becomes day after day in the military. When it becomes part of a practice, a mindset, discipline, self-mastery. But self-mastery is more than just physicality. It's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual. Balancing those 4 dimensions, like the Archangel Saint Michael reminds us, the upper and the lower pyramid, the ascending and the descending pyramid. When they're brought together, create the Merkaba, our light body. Going deep within, being able to reach out and above, as they say. Blending them both. Meditation. Some people say, I can't meditate, I can't do it. Well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to be Paramahansa Yogananda on the first day? Did you go online and find a really cool robe and maybe, I don't know, some crystals in your robe and on your zafu? And if Paramahansa Yogananda can do it, you can do it too, because you read all the books, the autobiography of a yogi. And so you're sitting on your zafu thinking about Yogananda. Excerpts from Autobiography of a Yogi, one of my favorite books of all time. And you're disappointed because you can't sit there for an hour and a half in a state of nirvana. Maybe what you really needed to do was just realize that reading the book maybe was just part of what the practice would be. Maybe part of your daily practice is reading words of inspiration. Maybe it's cracking open. Have you ever done that before? You just take one of your favorite spiritual books and you just open it up to a page, surprise, and you read what's on that page for a daily inspiration. Love doing that. That can be a practice. So maybe part of your practice was just to read Autobiography of a Yogi. Maybe it wasn't to become the yogi or Paramahansa, or if you are certain that you want to practice that form of meditation, do it for 1 minute, and then 3 minutes, and then 5 minutes, and then maybe more until you can build up. Or maybe being introduced to meditation by reading Autobiography of a Yogi leads you upon a path to discover that meditation can also happen when you're wallpapering, when you're ironing a shirt, when you're walking in the forest. There are many forms of meditation. Being gentle with ourselves in our practice, allowing our practice to be unique. Some people have a morning practice of creating art first thing in the morning or writing first thing in the morning. They're inspired to journal. They're inspired to draw or to paint or to play music. That's their practice. And as that practice unfolds and as it ensues, there's an energy that's created. That's the thing about practices and pathways. When we have a practice that nourishes our soul, that's the practice I'm talking about. Not that fulfills a weekly obligation. That's not what I'm talking about. A daily practice that nourishes your soul, it creates alchemy, creates magic. When you nourish your soul becomes vibrant. It becomes more magnetic to what it is that feeds your soul, nourishes your soul. And what do we do with that if we have a nourished soul? Well, it doesn't mean that we have to go out and save the world. But it does usually mean that when our soul is nourished and we feel content in our soul and balanced in our soul, it does mean that perhaps our behavior, our desires, what it is that we do in the world, the way that we are in the world, reflects that. It reflects that. And we find opportunities to serve ourselves and others, whether it's through daily prayer, daily good thoughts, daily visualizations, volunteerism, assisting somebody that you know is in need. A nourished soul oftentimes feels a wonderful desire, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to help others, not to save them, but to assist, to become part of a larger tapestry. As Amantha would say, an active part of the weave. And sometimes it's just done subtly, just in our light shining. And again, the path isn't always lined with gold or yellow bricks. Sometimes it's just very humble. And only we know what our practice and our path is. We don't have to prove it to anyone else. We don't have to stand up to muster judgment. We know what our practice is. We know what our path is. And it changes and it evolves. Sometimes it falls to the wayside and we have to pick it back up. But we know, Spirit knows, our soul knows. I don't think we were all meant to fit, through the same knothole of life. I don't think we were all supposed to do just one thing. Sometimes we are uniquely contrarian. It's all about respect, really. Respect for everybody else's path. This morning at the 11 o'clock hour, my dear friend Terry Ruel, she's going to follow up here on Spreaker, and I think you're going to like what she's talking about. It kind of fits into what I'm talking about this morning. It's about taking, tumultuous times and creating something good out of it. Finding the good in tumult, creating something positive out of it. I always look forward to Wednesday mornings with Terry. She's a wise woman. She knows a lot of stuff. Breaking down and breaking through. Utilizing turbulent times to grow. That's what she's going to be talking about at the 11 o'clock hour, and I hope that you can join me and her in just a few moments. And in the meantime, I'm going to go and indulge in one of my morning practices, and that is to get a fresh cup of joe. Thank you all for making me part of your Wednesday practice. Thank you for the practice of shining your light, because we all feel it. It does make a difference, everybody. We may not always see it. We may not always feel it or understanding, but shining our light, our love, our respect makes a difference. Shine on, everybody. Blessings be.